Welcome to Season 5 of Mind Matters. I'm Ivana, and this season, we're getting sensory. Because your senses aren't just how you experience the world, they're how you interpret it. Sight, sound, touch, taste, smell. Why do certain smells trigger instant nostalgia? Why does physical touch soothe some people and overwhelm others? Because once you understand your senses, you understand why you feel what you feel. Imagine a small lab room, lights low. 30 adults sit still. Sticky sensors on their skin count heartbeats. They wear goggles that swap any scene in 1/10 of a second. First, the goggles show a park bench at noon, then the image vanishes. 1 beat later, the same bench returns wrapped in warm orange light like late summer. Heart rate jumps, cheeks flush. The group suddenly likes the empty bench. A few minutes pass. The bench pops up again, now under cold blue-gray clouds and broken street lamps. Sensors spike again, this time marking worry. Nothing on the bench moved, only the light around it changed. The test, done at MIT in 2023, proves that sight does not just notice mood, it writes it. One shift in color or shadow and the body rings like a bell. Hold that in mind while we meet one volunteer, Raphael, a bus driver. When the broken lamp scene appears, he feels a knot form in his stomach. He knows he sits safe in a chair, yet sight speaks first. Photons leave the screen, touch the retina, rush to the thalamus, then fire the amygdala before thought can wake up. By the time Raphael reasons it out, his nerves already feel the fear or the warmth that his eyes picked. This episode explores our sight and how rods, cones, and midbrain circuits design our moods, our fears, even our compassion. I will explain why looking up into the distance relaxes the optic nerve, why midnight phone scrolling can dull your motivation, and how a tiny flash of red can change a football referee's verdict. Eyes may seem like windows to our souls, but a better way to think of them is that they are also stage lights, spotlights, coloring every scene we experience. Can I say something shocking? We do not see the world as it is, we see the world as we are. Who first said that? Anais Nin? Kant? The internet cannot agree. What matters is the principle. Your eyes are not CCTV cameras passively recording the scene. They are sculptors that carve from raw light a story that fits your expectations. Picture this. Volunteers sit in front of an ambiguous figure that can be read as either the letter B or the number 13. The twist, they are told they will get a tasty orange juice if a letter appears, or a foul-tasting health drink if a number appears. Most participants suddenly see the figure as a B. But when the researchers swapped the reward-punishment pairing, you guessed it. Most participants saw number 13 in anticipation of the sweet juice. Nothing on the screen was changed, only the observer's motivation. Belchitz and Dunning ran this experiment at Cornell in 2006, showing that desires and fears reach all the way down to primary visual interpretation. In other words, the retina sends raw data, but the brain edits the footage to fit what we want or dread to be true. Have you ever walked into a crowded cafe after a stressful morning and then saw how many angry faces appear? But once you walk into the same cafe for a relaxing moment with friends, suddenly everyone looks friendly. Same place, same lighting, but an entirely different movie. This is visual priming. Your brain predicts the plot before it watches the movie, then edits out whatever contradicts the script. Pause and ask yourself, what am I primed for today? Kindness, danger, competition? That invisible primer decides which smiles you notice and which warnings you miss. Let me explain how this happens. When you blink, light briefly stops reaching the eye. Once the lids open, photons strike the retina, activating your rods and cones. Signals travel through the optic nerve to the thalamus, then moves to the primary visual cortex at the back of the brain. From there, information is sent forward to higher visual areas that detect shape, color, and movement. A second pathway runs in the opposite direction. The prefrontal cortex at the front of your brain, which handles goals, memories, and expectations, sends feedback to the back of the brain in the visual area. That feedback then adjusts the visual signal before it reaches your conscious awareness. In practical terms, what you expect to see can sharpen or soften edges, brighten or dull colors, and even influence which details you notice. This top-down influence explains the halo effect. If you remember the season on biases, it is when observers view a symmetrical, healthy-looking face, the prefrontal cortex automatically labels the face as positive, and that label travels back to the back of the brain in the visual areas. As a result, the observer not only sees an attractive face, they also assume that he or she has traits such as competence and trustworthiness. This judgment feels immediate because the brain has blended raw visual information with expectation before the conscious thought begins. So perception starts with eyes and retina, but meaning is added by the brain's predictive circuits. We do not first register individual features like a nose or lips. We first register context-driven interpretation of who the person is. Put simply, your eyes are like the camera on your phone. They capture raw pixels, but your brain is the photo editing app that adds filters, captions, and stickers before you even notice the shot. That means when you meet someone new, you do not scan each eyebrow or freckle first. Instead, in a split second, your brain pulls from past memories, current mood, and social cues to label the whole person as safe, stern, friendly, or suspicious. Only after that snap judgment do you start noticing details like eye color or hairstyle. In short, sight provides the data, prediction supplies the story. Maybe that explains why many of us have a type we're attracted to. Now, how can light viewing influence our mood in a negative way? Fast forward to your bedroom. Clock says 1:37 a.m. Your thumb is still flicking through social media. You promise yourself just one more post, a harmless thing. The screen's light punches through your eyelids, then slaps the pineal gland and tells melatonin to stand down, not get you sleepy. Worse, that light excites the habenula. It is a small but opinionated structure wired to punishment prediction. Think of it as the brain's internal pessimist, always bracing for bad news. If you overstimulate your habenula, you can be sure that your motivation will shrink. When you face a bright screen after midnight, several neurohormonal dominoes fall in quick sequence. Here's the chain reaction. Please bear with me. 1. Melatonin suppression. 15 minutes of smartphone exposure late at night can cut melatonin release by roughly 20% and delay its peak for more than 40 minutes. In a controlled crossover study, participants who read on an unfiltered phone at 11 p.m. showed significantly lower melatonin at bedtime than when they used the same device with a blue light filter. 2. Circadian phase shift. Lab data indicate that 2 hours of evening light exposure can push the internal clock back by about 30 minutes, which means you will still be in a biological night state when the alarm rings. 3. Habenula and mood circuits. Rodent work shows that chronic night light drives habenula hyperexcitability and promotes depression-like behavior. Human imaging studies find parallel increases in negative mood after late evening light pulses. A 2023 population study that tracked light habits with wearable sensors found that people who logged the most post-midnight light reported lower morning vigor, higher irritability, and slower working memory scores the following day. Those effects were independent of total sleep time, pointing to circadian mistiming rather than mere sleep loss. And then add the cortisol into the mix. Cortisol should taper to its lowest point around midnight, yet bright light keeps levels artificially elevated. This blunts the pre-dawn cortisol awakening response, leaving you groggy at breakfast and prone to afternoon energy crashes, a pattern seen in adolescents and adults across multiple survey cohorts. Here are some practical countermeasures. Curfew for bright light, always. Aim to power down strong blue sources 2 hours before your target sleep time. Angle and distance, if you must finish work, prop the device below eye level at arm's length so fewer melanopsin-rich retinal cells are hit. Use warm tone settings or clip-on amber filters. They trim blue output by up to 80%. Let dawn light do the heavy lifting. 10 minutes of outdoor light within an hour of waking boosts serotonin pathways that elevate mood. Reserve the bed for darkness. Even 8 lux, roughly the glow of a hallway nightlight, can measurably drop nocturnal melatonin. In short, last night's glow primes today's emotional weather. Treat post 10 p.m. light like caffeine, enjoyable in moderation before dusk, but costly if taken too close to sleep. So this is my main point. Give your eyes some air, like you would rest your feet. Think of the tiny muscles around your eye's lens as rubber bands. When you read your phone or laptop, those bands stay pulled tight so you can focus up close. Keep them tense for hours and they get tired, just like any other muscle. Tired eye muscles lead to blur, dryness, and the nagging headache many people call screen fatigue. A quick reset is the 20-20-20 rule. Every 20 minutes, shift your gaze to something about 20 feet away and hold that view for 20 seconds. Maybe you already noticed how relaxing it is to sip on a cup of coffee while gazing into the distance. Why it works. When you look far away, the lens flattens and the rubber band muscles loosen, the optical equivalent of dropping your shoulders after carrying a heavy bag. Relaxed eye muscles send fewer alert signals to the brain, which turns down fight or flight chemistry and lets the calmer parasympathetic system take over. A distant, slightly upward view encourages you to lift your chin, open your chest, and take a deeper breath. Another built-in stress reliever. In short, step away from close-up pixels, give your eyes room to roam, and let nature handle a bit of your stress management. Functional MRI studies show that deliberate practice in face individuation, where trainees describe unique features rather than categories, measurably reduces racial bias. Curating a social media feed with diverse faces can also stretch the template your visual cortex uses to define beauty. Beauty slowly migrates from symmetry and familiarity to uniqueness and story. And let me venture into the hot topic of love and dating, or how vision shapes attraction in subtle ways. Look across a cafe table at someone you find interesting. You may think the conversation itself builds rapport, yet a quiet visual orchestra is already tuning the emotional score. Research dating back to Hess and Polt in the 1960s shows that pupils widen when we look at something or someone we like. Those changes are small, millimeters at most, but they register subconsciously. Partners shown photos with artificially enlarged pupils rated the faces as warmer and more approachable. A little practical takeaway: soften the lighting when possible. Candlelight or a low-watt lamp lets natural pupil shifts remain visible, nudging mutual warmth without words. Another interesting bit is about eye contact. Too little gaze can signal disinterest. Too much can actually feel confrontational. Studies using eye tracking cameras suggest an ideal ratio of around 60% of direct eye contact while speaking and about 40% while listening. That slight asymmetry signals confidence when you talk and attentiveness when you listen. This ties into saccades and attention. Microsaccades are those jittery movements your eyes make several times per second. It is when your eyes shift toward objects that matter to you. Experiments in speed dating show that partners who rapidly match each other's saccade patterns match better later. Simply put, it means that their eyes land on the same facial zones. Well, these people report higher matches and emotional clicks after only 4 minutes together. Synchrony seems to fast-track a feeling of shared reality. You cannot force microsaccades, but you can encourage visual synchrony by occasionally following the other person's gaze to whatever caught their eye, acknowledging it with a quick comment. It signals, I see what you see, cultivating kinship. And then comes the attractiveness. Psychologists know that attractiveness is judged relatively, not absolutely. If you enter a group where most people wear muted tones and you add a subtle accent, say a deep green scarf or an indigo shirt, you create a gentle pop in the visual field, drawing initial attention that can grow into curiosity. The same principle applies to venue choice. A cozy wood-paneled bar will make a simple white shirt stand out more than a bright nightclub would. Visual context acts like framing in a gallery, shaping the perceived value of whatever sits inside it. Vision is not superficial in relationships, it is foundational. By managing lighting, eye contact rhythm, shared gaze, and environment, you tilt the odds toward authentic connection, all without a single corny pickup line. And if we are talking about sight, we should also mention any blind spots we might have. Try this test. Hold out your right arm, lift a thumb, close your left eye, and stare at the light switch across the room. Now move that thumb slowly into your peripheral vision. At a certain angle, the thumb vanishes. Photoreceptors are missing where the optic nerve exits your retina, so the image simply never arrives. Yet instead of showing a black hole, the brain stitches in background from the surrounding scene. A neural patch that feels utterly real. You are looking at pure invention that you instantly believe. This little magic trick is not confined to eyeballs. Social perception runs the same software. Imagine walking into the office kitchen. A colleague gives only a curt nod. You mentally fill the gap. She is annoyed with me. In reality, her mind might be on a sick parent or a looming deadline. The visual system's talent for seamless repair becomes a cognitive vulnerability. It turns partial data into full stories. Neuroscientists call the process predictive coding. Sensory regions send rough drafts upward, then higher processing areas compare those drafts with prior experience, then send edits back down. 90% of what we see is prediction. Only 10% is fresh input. This ratio makes everyday life efficient, yet it creates blind spots for anything that contradicts our templates. A shy student in class can be mistaken for aloof, a neutral tweet for sarcasm. The gap between signal and guess is where misunderstandings happens. How do we catch the glitch? Start with a two-step pause. First, notice emotional certainty. If a snap judgment feels oddly instantaneous, that is the perceptual equivalent of your thumb disappearing. A hint you are missing pixels. Second, ask yourself, what else could this mean? Eye tracking research finds that when we stop to think of other possible reasons, we look at someone's face longer and notice more detail before deciding what we think of them. For example, the tension in their jaw or whether their smile reaches the eyes. That extra half second of visual data matters. It gives the brain fresh evidence instead of letting old assumptions fill in the blanks. People who adopt this quick scan again habit make fewer snap judgments in lab tests, and report fewer misunderstandings at work and home. You can train it by silently asking, what else could be going on for this person? Each time you feel an instant opinion forming. The question itself slows the mind. The eyes keep gathering information, and your final read on the situation becomes far more accurate and empathetic. Every fraction of a second, your retina drinks in a scattered storm of photons. Then your cortex arranges that storm into streets, faces, sky, and song lyrics on a passing billboard. It feels effortless. Yet trillions of sodium ions switch positions to make it happen. And each switch is nudged by memories of every street and face you have ever seen. In that sense, your eyes are a part microscope, part scrapbook, and part fortune teller, forever blending what is present with what was and what might be. Pause and ask, what kind of editor have I hired for my inner movie? A critic or a curator of wonder, a warrior or a patient observer? The answer shows up in the tiny choices of where you aim your gaze. Do you fixate on flaws in the mirror before noticing health in the skin? Do you spot the single cloud that threatens rain or the widening blue sky around it? Visual attention works like compound interest. Whatever you look at accrues emotional value. And over days, those values shape mood, motivation, and even the immune system. A simple science-backed ritual can tilt the balance toward clarity. Step outside within an hour of sunrise. Let low-angle light sweep across the melanopsin cells in the lower half of your retina. That brief cue anchors circadian genes in every organ, lifting daytime alertness and setting the timer for evening melatonin. Around midday, take a 2-minute roof break, lean back, trace the outline of chimneys or treetops, feel neck muscles release and heart rate settle. After sunset, make darkness a deliberate friend. Switch lamps to warm tones, or better yet, light a single candle, helping the habenula quiet its pessimistic chatter. Small acts, big neurochemical dividends. Remember, vision is not a window, but a dialogue. The world offers raw light. You answer with interpretation. If you choose patience, curiosity, and kindness as your reply, the conversation turns richer, subtler, and far more forgiving. So keep looking with intention, keep questioning the first draft your brain supplies, and keep your mind open to scenes you have never allowed yourself to see. I will meet you in the next episode. Eyes wide, science ready, curiosity switched fully on. I will link all the studies and references in the show's description. If you found this discussion insightful, please consider sharing it with friends, family, or colleagues. Let's keep the conversation going about how we can make this affluent corner of Europe a healthier, more equitable place for everyone. Until next time, remember, your mind matters, and taking care of it is the best investment you'll ever make.